As always, we try to have an interesting guest join us and talk about things such as stress, mental health, the correlation of all those aspects of life. And once again, we have a very interesting guest in Charlie Backer. How are you doing, Charlie?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day outside. So we actually are experiencing fall in St. Louis without the pumpkin spice. I was anticipating having pumpkin spice latte here.
Well, we're not that level yet of a podcast, but at some point we may have water.
I think that would be huge.
Yeah, that'd be huge.
Pumpkin spice flavored water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is nice outside. It's perfect St. Louis kind of weathery day. And you kind of bring an interesting story to us. So first off, you are the creator of
Hot Charlie's, which is a local hot sauce company. We have two different types of hot sauces, as well as a hot sauce dust, which is like a dry version of the sauce. So that's what I do for a living. I sell hot sauce.
You sell hot sauce.
Hot sauce salesman.
And it tastes
delicious. It's different than your regular hot sauce because it's made with real garlic. So it has a thicker consistency with it. But with it being made with real garlic, you get hit with a ton of flavor in the beginning, and then the heat sort of creeps up. So it's I would view it as like more of a premium side of hot sauce. It's not like anything you've ever tried before.
So as you said, you sell hot sauce, but you're also the creator of it, correct?
Yeah, I created it in my kitchen like 7 or 8 years ago. I was getting ready for a Super Bowl party, and I was wanting wings that had a ton of heat but good flavor, and so that's where it sort of got created in the kitchen. And I know we'll talk about sobriety and other things later, but it was interesting. Some friends actually texted me a year and a half ago and said I should start bottling this, and they had been drinking all weekend, so they were trying my sauce.
Yeah.
And so
that's what it took for them to try it. They had to drink all weekend.
You have to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere.
And I was still drinking at the time. So, like, how many times when you were younger did you have, like, drunken conversations with your friends at night? Be like, oh, my gosh, I'm going to start this business. Or I'm going to start competing in the gym and become a fitness model. And so Hot Charlie's actually began just me drinking as a drinking thought. And it took off. And in that process, I actually became sober. So it was like a drunken dream that became a sober reality. These are good cliches here, Chris. So I actually stopped the sauce to do the sauce.
Oh, that's beautiful.
See, that could be a bumper sticker.
Beautiful. That could Hot Charlie's now into bumper stickers as well too, right?
The sober guy.
Yeah, the sober guy. So you're an entrepreneur then, right? Who's also recovering.
Yeah. And I don't know if I even use the word recovering. I tried AA. I think AA is a great thing. But really the biggest thing within like my own personal sobriety is having that support group. And my wife is extremely supportive and encouraging, my family and my friends. So that really, I think, helped to insulate me within, like, I guess, just choosing to be sober.
So, when we talk about, mental health, and we know a lot of times people that engage in drinking or may have a drinking problem, right? There's been certain aspects of life that have kind of maybe led them down that path, and sometimes mental health plays a role in that as well too. Is that something you've had to work through as well throughout life?
Like mental health has
there's mental health, right? We all have our own baselines up and down,
right?
When you start figuring out, like what was driving you to drink more than you should.
Well, I think it was one of those things that I always wanted to blame it on something else. Like I had a stressful day at work, or there's financial stress or stress at with friends or in life. You want to blame your drinking and like you're coping with something. But one of those things that I didn't realize until I became sober, is that I was sort of drinking to numb my own struggles with like depression and anxiety. And so if you've seen the movie Shrek, peeling back the layers.
Yeah.
So meeting with like therapists and counselors, they really helped me to understand what the root cause of my drinking was. Where I can say, if you go to AA, you say I'm an alcoholic. I would just say I abused alcohol and I used it to self-medicate. So when you take away that medication, you're going to have a withdrawal. And so it's like, okay, well, how do I deal with stress and the ups and downs of depression and anxiety? It's like I have to figure out a healthy way. So I'm still on that path. I've been sober for, it'll be, I guess, about a year and a half. And so you're still learning new things every day on how to better cope with your different lifestyle.
So when you look back over time, when you talk about depression and anxiety, which are two of the most common, diagnosable mental health issues in the U.S. Right now, when you look back, can you see that in yourself? Depression symptoms, anxiety symptoms early on?
Yeah, it's something that I think I'd struggled with for a while, but it got prevalent once I introduced alcohol. it really got more prevalent that I realized that I was hiding something or coping with something that I wasn't really addressing. But I mean, I think we all deal with stresses differently. I'm an extremely, like this, I did a post yesterday on my Facebook. So if you see Hot Charlie's out there and I'm on TV or I'm doing social media or even on my own personal Instagram and Facebook, I am by nature an extremely optimistic, charismatic person. You will see, I'm almost happy all the time. But all the time is not every time. Like I do have my down moments. Like earlier this week, there was 2 days I just didn't want to get out of bed. It's like you get depressed, you get those lows. And so like my post yesterday on social media was just saying, you can follow these other charismatic entrepreneurs on social media, but realize I control my message, what I share. It's not that I don't want to be completely honest, because it's my goal in life to be as genuine and as authentic as possible. But when you're depressed, you don't want to share that. Nobody wants to see a grown man, not getting out of bed. Yeah. They want to see the guy that's out there hustling, which like as an entrepreneur, you're out there, you hustle every single day, but we're not perfect. And I think the sooner people realize that these celebrities, they're not perfect. They do have their struggles. They do have their own demons to face. They're going to realize that they can relate. And that's where I like, the whole hashtag is end the stigma. Right, that is the
breakdown stigma. Hashtag breakdown stigma. Yeah,
breakdown stigma, because that's huge. People just need to realize. So a couple years ago at my mom's funeral, a local priest named Father Fallon, he was given the eulogy or the homily, and we're talking about grief and things like that. But a phrase that really stuck with me is he said, "It's okay not to be okay." And I think whether we're talking about depression, anxiety, if you have a struggle with alcohol or drugs, that it's okay to ask for help. And that's like what my big social media post was this week. It's like, ask for help. Ask for reaching, that hand to reach out, because there are so many people out there that want to help you, like your organization.
Yes, stlouiscounseling.org. But where do you think you'd be at today if you had walls built up of stigma, letting stigma control you, and not asking for help, not sharing with your loved ones where you're at? Do you think you'd be as successful as you are right now?
No, absolutely not.
No,
because Hot Charlie's it would never have. I mean, not like it was like a drunken dream, but when you quit drinking alcohol, and I was drinking almost every night, so when you have that void of time, you have a lot of energy to focus towards something. And I chose to focus that on creating a business. But if I didn't, I would still just be drinking. I would still be working for corporate America. I was a functioning drinker. But yeah, I know Hot Charlie's because I had so much more time and energy to put towards, like, I'm passionate. Like, I love Hot Charlie's. It's a delicious hot sauce. It's a great dust. But like every day I get to wake up and do something that I enjoy.
Yeah. And you guys are in what, 70 different
we're
retailers?
About 70 locations across Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive for just after a little over a year, really.
Yeah,
right?
And like, as we talk about like my whole journey with like entrepreneurship, like I lost my job in January. So I think like within mental health, you always view like the stressors, like what are reasons that people start drinking again, or they turn to a drug or whatever. And it's like, I had a choice when I got let go. It was like, okay, I can stay at home and be depressed for a few months, which I did, full honesty there. Or I could go find another job, or I can just go crazy with Hot Charlie's. And I did that. Like once I realized that this is where I felt God was calling me, I went from about 5 to 7 retailers earlier this year to, adding almost 70 over the next 4 months. And that's because like I made a choice. You have to make a choice. So like whether it be like with your sobriety or with your own mental health, you have to make that choice. I don't think that choice can ever be made for you.
And as you point out, the reality is it's still going to be there. Some of these stressors, some of these inclinations to just not want to do anything today.
Right.
And when you look at, I guess speak a little bit about being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, that's the stress of that alone can bring on some depression and anxiety, I imagine, because you're out there hustling every day, just trying to get your paycheck, make a living.
It's interesting. I was actually thinking like yesterday, so I was at a major low, and I mean, those people out there that struggle with depression and anxiety, you realize you're gonna have highs and lows. I had a major low, and I was like, if I was ever write a book on my journey with Hot Charlie's, it would be called The Disease of Entrepreneurship, because I don't think it's like a normal thing. It's like to be an entrepreneur just because you're doing things. Like I do things that are so opposite of what society would say or what logics would say. And the way I can really relate entrepreneurship is like jumping, like from my experience, is jumping into the deep end of the pool, not knowing how to swim. And then I've been in the pool for so long that you just get used to the struggle and you get comfortable being uncomfortable. But yeah, like with entrepreneurship, like there were plenty of days I would wake up with no money in the bank account. And it's not just me. I've got a wife. I've got 2 kids. And I don't know if you want to talk about karma or what comes around goes around, but I really do believe that if you work your butt off and you try your best and you put all your energy and passion behind doing something, I believe great things will eventually happen. I think God's timing is very interesting. It's always his timing. But yeah, it's just every day, it's just trying not to give up. But then when you're also struggling with depression, it's like, well, sometimes you feel all alone. And being an entrepreneur, I don't have anybody I work with. I don't have anybody I work for. But you, on social media and in life, you have these social media followings where there's people that are very encouraging. But at the end of the day, you have to put your shoes on and you have to get out the door and hustle.
Definitely. Now, you didn't grow up wanting to be an entrepreneur, right?
No.
What was the career plan for you?
I'd like to say I always wanted to be a cop. And
Yeah?
oddly
Yeah, me
enough,
too.
Like if I could, like when I was like 5 or 6, I would love to be a cop. I always looked up to police, and I still do. But actually, I went and I studied to be a Catholic priest for about 7 years.
7 years. Wow. So seminary, right?
Yeah, I was in the seminary for the Archdiocese of St. Louis.
Wow. So you went from wanting to be a police officer, a priest, and now entrepreneur of Hot Charlie's.
Yeah, and in between, I was, I have my master's in HR, so I've worked in upper level sales and management, and it was interesting. So when I was working for my previous company and I was selling, payroll and consulting with HR, I woke up. This was April 2017, so before I even launched like the official Hot Charlie's bottles because I'd be manufactured. I woke up one morning and I told my wife, I was like, hey, one day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be a hot sauce salesman. And see, you laugh. See, she didn't laugh at me then.
Yeah. Well, you need support. That's
right.
good. Your wife
Thanks
supported
a lot,
you.
Tom.
Yes. Yeah.
But like still, like I can't say that without laughing. But I think you sort of throw those things out into the world and eventually it works itself out. And, it was almost a year ago to that day. Yeah, I was a hot sauce salesman. And that's what I do every day. I wake up. I try to get people to try my hot sauce or my dust and get into more locations, and it is truly a passion. Like I love what I do every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you a side question. Did you have a favorite cop show growing up?
Well, cops.
Cops?
I would like
Okay,
to say
see.
Reno 911, but I'll watch that now. But no, cops.
Cops.
I like cops.
See, I'm a little older
Or
than you,
Chips.
so I was a Chips guy.
Okay, I can do
was
that.
a Chips guy. All right. Punch or John?
A punch.
Okay, that's cool. I'm down with that too.
Yeah.
So I'm a John guy, but that's
It's
all right.
okay. Well, he was always clean cut. And
Yeah, well, I don't know what you're implying. People can't see this, but yeah. No, that's an interesting story. So spent some time in the seminary, and then decided corporate side. So,
Yeah, well-
so that I'm sure that shaped a lot of your morals and values in regards to just spending that time in the seminary, just kind of exploring who you are and what's calling you.
Yeah, and I think when you're in the seminary, you're in an environment that is, again, very encouraging towards the priesthood and your spiritual life. But it was a big struggle for me once I decided to take a break, because it wasn't like one day I woke up and I'm like, I'm not going to be a priest. It was a gradual discernment where it's like, okay, I was wondering, should I take a break? Should I date? Should I see if I'm supposed to be married? Should I see if I'm supposed to be a monk? And so in taking the time, I was in like a structured environment for 7 years. So leaving that, I was almost like I think Finding Nemo, like little fish just got out on its way, and I had to figure out things again. Like I didn't have the regular like high school experiences like with prom and stuff like that. So it's like learning the dating scene and learning who I am as a person. It's not I'm not Charlie the seminarian. I'm just Charlie. And that progress that took years for me to really figure out who I am.
Yeah, and now you're Charlie Hot Sauce.
And now I'm
Yeah.
Charlie.
Do you have a middle name? Do you have a middle name?
Charles Benjamin Hot Sauce.
Okay,
by the
Charles
way.
Benjamin Hot Sauce. It doesn't sound as good as Hot
Yeah.
Charlie's.
But I think it's all those things that we look back at our life, and the harder moments that are really painful to go through are the ones that really make us who we are. And we always have a choice on how we're going to, I guess, come across and respond to that fork in the road. But that's one of those things that I believe if you take the higher road, if you try to be the bigger person, that's where it's like even interesting, like in the entrepreneurship world. So like when you're in the seminary and you're talking about the Bible, it's turn the other cheek. Well, that's easy to do if you're reading it. There's a lot of things that are extremely easy to do with you read. But
Yeah.
like, actually applying it to, like if somebody wrongs me, if somebody says something, it's like, well, I want to say something back. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, you can't. Like that's not who you're supposed to be. So that's what I've enjoyed with entrepreneurship and as well as sobriety. It's like my goal. So when I was in the seminary, a guy, he's a Bishop Rice, so he's a bishop of different dioceses, but he was my spiritual director. And I was like, how do you know you've had a good day? And he's like, well, my goal is before I go to bed each night to say, God, I gave you my all. And as long as you can say that, then you can sleep soundly. And that's the way I try to honestly live my life. Like every day I try to be better than I was the day before. It's my goal to be a great dad and husband and to treat people with respect and integrity. And I believe if I do that, then I can at least own the type of person that I am. And I think it gives you some of that control in a very uncontrolling world.
Which then relates into kind of my next question. How do you entrepreneurship, very stressful, figuring out how to not drink, hard, right? Being married, hard. Being a parent, hard. How do you manage all that stress? Like, what advice could you give to another entrepreneur out there that is like struggling with that amount of stress? What could you say?
I would say you have to be honest and make sure you're being true to who you are. I think especially like early entrepreneurs, even myself, you question who you are. Am I being a fake? Am I being a phony? Because you're trying to do something almost like you're going upstream in a river. But the biggest advice is it's okay not to be right all the time. Like you're going to fail. Like there's a lot of things that if I can go back and change, I would. So just realizing that and just making sure that you understand your why. So like I was in a meeting earlier this year talking with these professionals, and I'm like, if Hot Charlie's ever gets in the way of me being a good dad and husband, I'll walk away, no matter how much money it's making, because that's my why. I'm trying to be the best dad and husband that I can be. If I can't do that within Hot Charlie's, then I'll do something else, because that's the 40 quote unquote 40 hours of business time is not worth destroying my family. So yeah, the advice that I have, I don't know, entrepreneurship is such a it's such a general term. Because another friend that I know in St. Louis, he launched a company. He's got a full-time job, and he's doing it from sort of a different way. But I think the dictionary, and Chris, you maybe can tell me if I'm wrong, the definition of entrepreneurship, you're supposed to know this.
I'm not here.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. Well, Tom, we're just talking to Chris.
Yeah.
I realize the magnetism.
Yeah.
It's the beauty. There's beauty there.
I can't even keep my legs on this side of the table.
So, so like the definition of entrepreneurship, I believe, is pursuing a goal with greater than normal financial risk. So yeah, like with Hot Charlie's, did I anticipate to lose my job? Did I anticipate to be doing it full time this quick? No, not at all. So anybody else that's out there, if you have a dream and a passion and ability to get there, just take a leap, jump into the deep end of the pool, and there are going to be struggles, there are going to be difficulties, but make sure that your significant other or the people closest to you support you. If they don't, then find people in your life that will. But then also to realize that entrepreneurs, at least my perspective, we're very vulnerable. Like I wear my heart on my sleeve, and then it's just really controlling your circle, like who you allow in your life, and anybody that's toxic, get them away, or anything, even like alcohol or drugs. Just everything toxic has to be out of your life, and then just surround yourself with very encouraging people. Like that's what you got to do.
So creating some very strong boundaries. It sounds like
it's very difficult because I think as a business owner, you want to be very connected to your customers, and I try to share a lot on social media, both on my own personal side and my professional side. But yeah, you have to learn to turn that off. I haven't learned it yet, so I'm not speaking from like, oh, I've done this, but it's
what you're supposed to do.
Temptation, right?
Yeah, exactly. So do you, knowing, and I think awareness is so important for, everybody, but, being aware of your own mental health. When you talk about depression, anxiety, that, you might be prone to that at times. Do you give yourself ever kind of just your own little mental health checkup to kind of see how you're doing? You check in with yourself type of thing?
I wish I did. Like usually it's like, the way it's been the past couple of days where it's like, I could feel that I was in a funk, and I'm like, okay, I feel I'm in a funk. Then I was a little crabby. Then the next day I'm just like, bam, I'm not getting up. Like I'm in a depressed funk. I didn't realize until like it was 2 days in, and then it's like, okay, well then I have to change things, and I have to, busy up my schedule or whatever I need to do. But I think it's great when people talk with counselors, when they talk with, like, if they have a spiritual director, or just trying to be as open and honest with those closest to you as you possibly can. I mean, I think with depression, not everybody's going to understand, because the way you're feeling, the way you're thinking, it's not logical. It doesn't make sense to most people. But if you struggle with depression, then it's like, well, yeah, it makes sense to me. It may not be the way the world is feeling. It could be a beautiful day outside. Well, that doesn't mean I don't feel gloomy.
Exactly.
And it's allowing yourself like the whole thing, it's okay not to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And I think that's why it's so important, and why we choose to do this podcast is to help people get a better understanding of, like you said, like you just described with some depression symptoms. It's like helping people who don't have depression understand it, because it's so much more than just get out of bed and go for a walk and you'll be fine.
Right.
It's just not that easy. And so when we talk about mental health, getting people, one, to realize we all have our own baseline of mental health, but then secondly is when that baseline becomes kind of out of whack, is to recognize that within ourselves, but also not to judge people based on that.
One. Yeah, I want, when I share, I can text a buddy, like a friend of mine, I was texting with him this morning. He's like, "How you doing today?" I'm like, "I'm good. I was just in a major funk." He's like, "Dude, I get there." But it's like, you want to be able to relate. You want to feel normal. But it's like when you text somebody, I just don't know why you're feeling like that. Why didn't you just go to the gym? Why didn't you just do that? It's like, if there was a magic pill, everybody would take it.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
There's just not. There's struggle.
Yeah, and until I think the greater society realizes mental health is a health issue. It relates to the body, it relates to the brain, and we always kind of just break it down as simple as possible. Depression is when your chemicals get lowered in the brain, and sometimes you need a psychotropic to bring those chemicals back up. But same thing with a gas tank, right? You got to refuel at times, and for some people that's harder than other people, and that's the difference.
And I think it's just viewing that, like what you're saying, it's normal. It's an I don't know if you'd use the word epidemic, but a lot of people struggle with it. And I think people they have this vision that, okay, somebody that's depressed is always in this dark hospital room sitting in a corner crying. It's like, no, they could be the person at the cubicle next to you that's just sitting there, just maybe not saying anything.
Exactly.
It's everybody struggles with it differently, and it's just being there. And I think even in our society, as we're dealing with the heroin epidemic or these suicides, and it's like we need to be able to ask the tough questions, are you okay? And realizing that everybody can struggle with something. Everybody does struggle with something.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody's got something on their plate right now, and I think that's a very important thing you brought up. Statement is checking in, asking if somebody's okay or not. And I think a lot of times our general maybe state of being a human being, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to maybe cross a boundary, but a lot of times, if someone asks you, "Hey, you just seem a little out of it today," is that going to offend you?
It might. It depends what type of mood I'm in.
Yeah.
I could get ticked off, but the thing is the majority of the time it might offend me. But those times when I really need to hear it, I really need to hear it. If I'm in a really depressed funk and somebody texts me, "Hey, dude, you seem off. Are you okay?" And it's like that allows, I think, a depressed person to sort of open up a little bit, it's like they see me, you want to be seen. It's even myself in a quote unquote public persona as the hot Charlie guy and entrepreneur. It's nobody's happy all the time.
Exactly. Exactly.
We all struggle, and the sooner people realize that you're not always happy, and they give people the benefit of the doubt. It's like, okay, yeah, he was having a bad day. It's like you want to text and say, "Hey, are you doing okay? Are you it's just to have a conversation, just as a friend."
Yeah. And like you said, even if you're not at a place where you really want to hear it, maybe later you might think about it and go, "Well, yeah, I was grumpy later, as you said, or earlier, but then later you can sit and reflect, because that's important too. I think, when it also comes to that world of stigma, mental health, right? There's a part of you that feels, like you said, you have this public persona, hot Charlie. There's a part of you that's not afraid to say, "You know what? I've dealt with some mental health issues. I've dealt with some drinking." Why do you think that's important for you to bring forward? Even though, people might say, "Oh my gosh, you have anxiety." Oh, wow.
Okay, so I would talk about two facets here. The sobriety thing, I was really ashamed when I became sober. I never wanted to be that guy at the party that doesn't drink and that friend that doesn't want to go out to the bar. But after I'd been sober for a few months, I began, I posted on Facebook, "I'm proudly celebrating 3 months of sobriety." I'm like, okay, that's good. And then as just time went on, I got more comfortable with myself because, again, I couldn't numb how I felt in the evening. I couldn't numb my depression or anxiety. I had to address it. And so that made me a more genuine and authentic person. And so once I hit my year mark for sobriety, I posted a video and just sharing sort of some of my story on how I came to it and how I'm feeling within it. And like, it took me like 7 or 8 times to record that video because I'm trying to perspective that I want to help somebody, and I never want it to seem that it's about me. It has nothing to do with me. I am one aspect of this whole of people struggling with alcohol. I am just one person, but I hope, because even when I was before I became sober, like I would look up on Instagram or Facebook or Google and try to find popular people, like celebrities that are sober, because like, I want somebody to normalize what I feel like I need to do. So even within anxiety and depression, so like 3 or 4 months ago, I wanted to post an Instagram video just saying I struggle with depression and anxiety. I can seem like a very happy, energetic, charismatic person, and I am most of the time, but I do struggle with that. Just that people will reach out to those in need that see them struggling and say, hey, it's okay. It's okay not to be okay. It's normal to have these feelings. We can help you. But it took me 3 months from that point to actually post something because, number one, I didn't want it to be about me. But number two, it's like you get so many highs and lows. You have to figure out the right point where you're at emotionally to share that. So it's really, I want to share my story in the hopes of inspiring somebody just to look at themselves. And when I shared my sobriety story, I had a few people reach out to me just saying, hey, how did you deal with sobriety in the beginning? How did you realize that you had a problem? And that was the world to me. Like, that meant that the whole video was worth it. If even just one person reached out and questioned, hey, maybe I need to make these changes in my life. Because I think if you're asking the questions, like, do I have a problem? You need to talk to somebody. Like, don't keep it on yourself, because your body, we're creatures of habit. We want to do things that we're used to and we're normal. So to do something different, to make a change, that's why people typically hire a trainer when they go to the gym. Because they want to do something better than what they're capable of. So that's where it's like talking to counselors or talking to other people. It gives them that realization that it's okay.
And that's the beauty of counseling a lot of times is, we want to share with our loved ones. We always say, like, we can tell your loved ones everything, but sometimes you got to maybe go to that counselor first and frame it the right way and figure some things out for yourself, and then be able to bring it to that loved one or bring it to whoever, you're desiring to bring it to. But the reality is you got to talk it out.
You have to. And this is where, like, my wife would chime in, and she'd like I could go to a counselor or talk to somebody, and she's like, Charlie, I've been telling you that for years. But I think a lot of times we tune our loved ones out because we just don't want to hear it. But when we go to a professional or somebody else, like, oh, well, yeah, if I do 20 push-ups a day, if my trainer says, I'll get, I'll have better posture. And it's like, everybody else, well, I've been telling you that. Like, sometimes it takes something different. You have to hear it differently for it to click.
I am constantly doing it with my wife, with everything, with Google. I thank God for Google, because now I can say, oh, look, an expert on Google is saying that don't press the brake so hard. And that way we don't have to get a brake job every single year.
WebMD, that'll lead to the Black Plague.
Exactly. So, we are here with, I almost said Hot Charlie. It's kind of like who you are,
call me whatever you
right?
want.
I'm going to call you Charlie. We're here with Charlie Backer of Hot Charlie's, and sharing a great story, some great success, overcoming some obstacles throughout life. And so glad we got connected.
Yeah, very much so. Really
and, love the fact that you're willing to share, because that's why we're doing this podcast as well, is to get the word out. Let's break down stigma. Let's get to the root of the matter, and let's check in on each other, and make us all a better kind of, just make it a better place to live.
Definitely.
So awesome.
All right, so you can check Hot Charlie's out at hotcharlies.com, or find us on Facebook. Just search Hot Charlie's, as well as Instagram, and we're available at area stores around St. Louis. We got a locator on our website. But check out Hot Charlie's.
Check us out at stlouiscounseling.org. We have 8 convenient locations throughout the St. Louis region, as well as a very strong school partnership program. But check us out at louiscounseling.org.
This has been Mental Health Matters with Tom Duff of St. Louis Counseling Services. Check out stlouiscounseling.org for more information.